It's getting hot. We're in the middle of a heat wave, but our chickens and our feathered friends, they don't have it so easy. Mostly they're outside and they need some extra help to stay cool. Chickens can and do suffer and die from heat stress. This is something that happens with even the most well-intentioned people who have companion chickens. So it's really important to be vigilant. So today I've got some steps to help you keep your girls and boys safe in the heat. First things first, you want to keep an eye on the weather. Throughout the summer, make sure you know what's going on. Is it going to be a really hot day coming up? If so, have a think and make some plans to make sure everyone in your family, feathered and fur, is safe. Step 2, you want to make sure that you're looking for signs of heat stress in your girls and boys. So, for example, you might find them holding their wings out as if they're carrying shopping bags. You might see them panting with their mouths open, and you might even see them becoming lethargic and looking really stressed out. This means that they're already suffering heat stress and it's time to take action. Ideally, we want them to stop getting to that stage so that they can stay comfy all day long. If you can make any changes in your schedule, for example working from home or having someone come in and pop in at lunchtime to check on them, then do that, because that could be the difference between spotting signs of heat stress or something really bad happening. You also want to make sure, now this is basic, but it's important, that there's lots of shade. You can't just have a chicken coop in the middle of the garden with just sunshine on it all day. You need to make sure that there's all kinds of shady spots for the girls. If you've got trees and shrubs in the garden, that's fantastic. If not, you need to add something like a shade sail or maybe a table that they can shelter under whilst you wait for some other plants to grow. You also want to make sure that they're not near any other structures that may make them even hotter. For example, colour-bond fences. We had a horrible story about somebody who had a chicken coop right by colour-bond fences, and it heated up so much that their chickens passed away before they even realised anything was wrong. So be really careful if you've got your hens in a contained area. So for the hot days over 35, you want to make sure that you're doing something extra to keep the girls safe. So that's when we turn on our sprinkler or mister. Now, the girls don't always appreciate the sprinkler, but it does do them good. Ideally, a mister setting is perfect because even if they're not in it, it cools down the area around them. We had some broiler hens rescued from the meat industry who really suffer in the heat, and by putting this in their enclosure, it cooled the area right down, and it also made the dirt nice and wet for them, so when they were sitting in that and having dust baths, they felt even more refreshed. You're also going to want to consider giving them a cool bath if any of your hens are really suffering. This is something that we do for the broiler chickens rescued from the meat industry, and also for any individuals who just suffer from heat stress. You'll notice the ones who pant a bit more than the others and find everything a little bit harder. It might be some of your older or heavier girls. Just pop them in a tub or something with mainly cold water, but with some warm water just to take the edge off. You don't want to put them into shock. And then just let them get nice and wet their feet and their belly and under their wings. Make sure you don't wet their heads and or get anything into their eyes or ears. We don't want to soak them, just want to cool them down. If your hen's already suffering severe heat stress, bring her inside and give her a dunk into the water. Again, not her head, but really cool her body down. That can be a lifesaver if you've got to the stage where you think you might lose a hen from heat stress. Another simple one, but so essential, is making sure there's plenty of fresh water, and not just leaving fresh water out and hoping for the best, but making sure that you've got some in shady spots in the garden. So when the sun's moving around the garden in the day, there's always water in the shade, and it's nice and full and it's not going to run out whilst you're away. As an extra step, you can even put ice cubes in the water to keep it cool, and if you're there, go and refresh that so that they're drinking nice, cool, refreshing water. Another option in addition to that is to put an ice cream tub full of water into the freezer, and then you've got a nice big ice block, and you can put it into the garden and it will melt during the day and the girls can drink that, and it'll be nice and cooling for them. Make sure you also have plain fresh water as well. Something that's great for your heavier girls is just to bring them into the aircon on days over 40 degrees. It may not be super fun for them to be inside, but it just is so much better than the alternative, which is severe heat stress and possibly even death. Sometimes if they really want to be outside in the day, and you don't have a place you can put them safely in the day, maybe just give them a break at night. Bring them in under the aircon in a ventilated area for them, and that'll just give them some relief from the heat. One of the ways chickens naturally cool themselves down is through dust bathing, which they love as well. So make sure there's plenty of places in your garden for dust bathing, nice dirt areas. It could be around the flower beds or veggie patches or anything, or under trees. Even better, wet the soil so that they're going to feel even cooler in their dust bath. And if you just have a coop, that's another bad side of having them in a coop in the day. It's just going to be so boring and there won't be dust bathing potential. Some people put fans in the coop or inside, again to help cool them down. What helps us and makes us feel more comfortable, the same can be done for hens. When hens are likely to experience heat stress, it's a good idea to support them nutritionally. So you can get supplements for birds, which are electrolytes and B vitamins and other nutritional support. Add that to the water and it just gives them a nice boost and helps them get through the day. Some areas may just be too hot. You've got to block them off. Like if your hens usually go into the garage and that just gets so hot, just block it off for the hot day so they cannot get in there. This is so true if you have broody hens who want to sit on the nesting box all day long inside a hot coop. I'm afraid you just got to block it off and give them an alternative. You just can't let them sit in there. Their instinct will be to sit, and in that time they could actually die from heat stress. It's always important to keep your chickens clean, but on a hot day it's really important. You want to make sure that your girls don't end up with fly strike, which is a horrible condition where flies lay eggs inside your chicken's bottom. So you need to make sure that you keep that area clean by giving them a nice cool bath if they have a messy bottom, and being aware that that can also be a symptom of something else wrong, so look further into it. You also want to make sure the coop is kept fresh and clean to give them a nice comfy environment. Another thing you can do is give them a tasty treat from the fridge, such as watermelon. They love it if it's nice and cool, just like we do, a refreshing treat that they'll really enjoy. One thing you want to avoid on a hot day is transporting chickens if you can avoid it. You just don't want to put them into a stressful place like a car. Even if you have air conditioning, it's going to be a bit much on a really hot day. However, if you have to, like in an emergency vet trip or something that cannot be rescheduled, then of course make sure they're in an air conditioned part of the car, but also never transport in boxes. Even when it's not hot, they're dangerous. Even with holes in, they get way too hot, and it's just better to have a pet carrier on hand that's well ventilated with some nice comfy straw. It's much safer and much more comfortable. So when it comes to bedtime, if they can't sleep in the house, you want to make sure the coop is as cool as possible. So give it a hose down over the roof and the nesting boxes. You can even add heat reflectors to the windows of the coop to keep it cooler in the day. You know, it's so important, especially with your heavier hens. If you've rescued broilers, fantastic, or turkeys, but they're going to suffer more in the heat. And it's up to us, the rescuers, the liberators, and the adopters, to make sure that they don't suffer and that we make things as easy for them as possible. I think it's really important whenever it gets hot to consider that all of the animals that are in factory farms, there's kind of this myth that factory farms are temperature regulated, but in truth, all the ones I've been into are really hot, and the animals, the chickens, are just panting, they're packed in, and they're clearly suffering. And they've built in this collateral damage of losing however many hundred to heat stress, and that's not a concern. It really comes down to money for them, for most of them, you know. So whilst there might be some which have temperature regulation, it's very rare. So please consider this on a hot day. Just spare a thought for the animals packed in together. It's so hot, and take those things out of your diet. Take their animal flesh and secretions out of your diet so that you're not contributing to that suffering.